Welcome to Talking in Stations. I am Matterall. I'm here with Rundle. How you doing, Rundle?
I'm doing great. As usual, I'm here to try to buffer you from looking bad. I will look silly and stupid for both of us. How's that?
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking that bullet, but I think I'm doomed. Let's see what we can do today with the news that we got from the TIS crew. It's been shoveling news all over the place. I think the headlines today are going to be CSM 16 has been announced. The election process is open for people who want to participate in that sort of thing. We also have some news about industry hot patches that are coming through. Of course, we had a big patch yesterday. Has to do with industry. It's the first of two patches that we know of, at least, that are going to change things quite a bit. And so a lot of things came in a little bit buggy. And so we'll see what the hot patches have done to fix that sort of thing. We also have, if we can get to it, an interview with Revendell, who is an industrial third-party application builder, and he built a really beautiful application. He's been showing it to us for a little while now, and unfortunately he's having internet issues where he's at, so if we get past that, we'll bring him on today. If not, we'll reschedule him for sometime this week. And of course, we'll have some more updates and see what's going on around the galaxy in your neck of the woods. Okay, Rundle, let's see what we got here. There's a couple things that we need to start with that are actually from yesterday. So
Yep.
inside of, I'll take this first one, inside of TIS Discord, Xanath wrote me and said, you missed an important detail in the patch. It wasn't in the patch notes that I know of, but the drop-down menu in space, each structure in the list has an icon which denotes what type of structure it is. And that is a big help to players when they are told to park at a Fortizar, for instance. When they look at structures, they not only see the name, but they can actually see an icon that says, this is a Fortizar, this is a Keepstar, this is an Astra House. And that narrows it down a bit. So good for you guys.
Yeah, that's on the drop-down menu when you right-click in space, right? So if you have it already listed in your overview, those already have the little icons. So I haven't honestly looked at this yet, but the drop-down menu, sometimes it's the quick right-click. As we talked about last night, sometimes your left hand's busy and your right hand has the mouse, and
Still busy.
all you can do is click in space and find the menu and find the structure. So maybe that's although those little things are always add up over time, and they'll save a pilot somewhere, and it'll be all worth it.
Yeah. All right. Another thing that we didn't cover yesterday, but Ashtarothi, as soon as the program was over, was like, oh my God, it's one of the biggest pieces of news of the day. And that is that belts have been removed from space. And I think it was, I forget how many belts were removed, but here is the criteria. If the belt stopped producing ore and was just a location, like a location beacon in space without an actual belt with it, due to a previous change, then those belts were taken out. And I believe there was a relatively small number. I want to say 1,500 belts, but I don't know if that is, 1,500 belts all over the galaxy. That probably wouldn't be that many, but so if it's not if see, there's a beacon, right? So if there's an asteroid belt, there's usually a beacon that you can warp to, and that puts you in proximity to the rocks. And then you can, put slow boat over to the rocks and start mining. And that's how you participate in mining, what's called belt mining. The problem is, when this change came out, it was worded in such a way that people thought, oh, that means if you mine out all the rocks, does that beacon disappear? And that could pose a big problem. And I think CSM representatives or CCP came out and said, no, that's not what happens. What this change means that happened yesterday was there are certain belts that have lost all their asteroids permanently. So there's no point in having a beacon there. So they removed those beacons. Now here's the thing, and this is what we wanted to talk about today. Removing belts that had no ore makes it so you can no longer trigger officers by killing the rats you can find in empty belts. Since Curse has 0 belts now, and you have to trigger angel officers in Curse, You effectively can no longer farm Tobias officer modules until CCP makes another change. That was
fun.
probably an oversight, but they'll get it fixed.
Whoops. Yeah. That seems, I would say that was an oversight as well. So I guess those officer modules, if you're hanging on to them, if you have any, maybe watch for a little price spike or something, or
maybe. Right?
Sell them now, or I don't know what to do with them.
Yes.
But it's gonna be a little tough to find them, so they shouldn't be not coming on the market anymore. So at some point, the cost will go up, or they'll be all destroyed from the game. Those are your two options at this point.
Yeah. So Shikoken reminds us that it is 14,000 belts were removed. I heard 15,000. I remember it was 1,500, but it was actually 15,000 that Dr. Spod, when this first happened, he was right on top of it looking around. He said there was like 15,000 belts had been. So it's 14,000 belts all spread out across the map, which probably isn't that many considering how many systems there are. I don't know, what is it, like 7,000 to 9,000 systems, and many of those systems have multiple belts. Some have 16 belts. They just have a ton of them. So I forget what the total number of belts are. I think it's like, anywhere from 50 to 100,000 belts. So 14,000 is just a percentage of them.
Still, for those people in Curse looking for Tobias, you can't find him there anymore. He's taking a vacation. Maybe he's going to go check out the new sites, all the new
he's on tour.
All the new landmarks. Tobias is on a roam to check out all the new landmarks for now.
Yeah, he's on a bus taking a tour.
Yeah.
Okay, hot patches for industry. We wanted to talk about this stuff too. Do you want to go over this stuff, Rundle?
Yeah, sure, I can go that. So as we talked about yesterday, the blueprints that were not seeded yesterday were put back, or were properly seeded on the market. So they're there now. You can go and buy them. And it's in the game notes for a patch from yesterday where you can find them. So they fixed that. They fixed an issue with the reactions incorrectly showing the research information. Reactions are not researchable, so they fixed that. We reported on that yesterday, so they've already fixed that. And there was a technical issue where fighters were not being recalled correctly when the command was issued off grid. This is important for if you're using your capital or super cap ship and you have dropped fighters somewhere and then you've had to warp off for some reason. You can still recall your drones, your fighters back to you. Apparently this was not working, so rip a hangar full of fighters for at least one day. They fixed that. And apparently if you were using the old map, there was this travel route was not displayed correctly that occurred when setting a destination that included a jump bridge. So this was obviously an oversight with this addition of the jump bridge capability. They didn't test the old map feature. So those are the main fixes that came through on the patch notes today. Wanted to report now that the blueprints are properly seeded. Just want to talk about this one. There's a conversation going on the TIS Discord and in a few other places about this one BP, at least that's being highlighted. It's the Enhanced Neuralink Protection Cell Blueprint. It appears that to fully research it to a 10/20, so that's ME and TE, material efficiency and time efficiency, it would cost you somewhere around 1 trillion ISK to do the full research into a full BP in high sec. That's if you're doing in high sec. It drops to about half of that if you're up in null sec in a fully rigged up Citadel. It's 3 billion. It's one of these blueprints that is 3 billion to purchase. So it's expected to be high on the research side of things, but there's a feeling that it shouldn't be quite this high. So no word if this is intended. I'm sure some people are going to look into that as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, let's see if I have a picture of that last one that you just said. And I do, so I'll bring it up a bit big here. Yeah, I think this is maybe the same thing, but this is something that I want to talk about.
Yes, it's very similar. Yes, it is.
Yeah, is this the same thing? Right. Similarly, job cost. I love this though. Let me just point this out here. Similarly, the job costs of the full chain, that means from beginning to end, to build a dreadnought with the new materials ends up being over 4 billion.
Just in job costs.
Just in job costs. That's not materials, which is probably another $4 billion.
Yeah.
And it used to be about
Easy.
164 million. So
Yeah. So yeah, so for supers, right, it'll cost about 100 billion just for doing a super. I think is what he said. Oh no, sorry. That's a incorrect. I think Kenneth gave us the 1 trillion number in high sec if you were doing it. So there seems to be. It's probably one of the knobs that they can turn and they can play with now to try to play with the cost model of building the capitals and super capitals, which is what they want to do. Now, whether or not they tune those knobs will be remain to be seen. But the 1 trillion ISK to fully research that one BP is crazy.
yeah, he seemed to say that was in line with other things. So
Well, the 3 billion purchase price for the blueprint is in line with the other ones. Yes, absolutely. But when
I see the
you
purchase
look at
price.
the research costs, though, that's what's out of line. So there's a fairly complex formula. Of course, the players don't exactly know the formula, but there is a complex formula they believe that is used to calculate the research costs, and there might be an extra zero floating in around there somewhere causing a problem. So we'll see. We'll see. It could be by design too, right? So I'm not saying with as even an opinion. I don't know, but $1 trillion seems excessive to do a fully researched BP that costs $3 billion. So
Right. So we'll probably see some adjustments going on. Again,
yeah.
I think that a lot of the stuff that's being set up now will look distorted from where we're at right now. So you have to just keep in mind that there is the overall goal of keeping the game in balance. If something seems like it's atrociously out of balance, rest assured they're going to put it in balance. So it's a matter of creating those dials that they can twist, a little bit of minerals, a little bit of gas products, a little bit of PI. With those dials, they can kind of, in different directions, dial in a certain price point for a certain ship. That may not happen all at once, but that's the overall goal. And that means that if people are mining to build Titans like they were in the yesteryears, like the last 3 years, and they had the ability to mine with orcas, let's say, or with rorquals, a ton of minerals to be able to build these giant ships, that kind of pressure on a market would completely wipe out the cost of minerals, which means that ships were incredibly cheap. They were dirt cheap, and that's why you get into the whole suicide dreads, suicide battleships, constant feeding and that sort of cycle. So this complicates things because it gives them different approaches to dial in a ship at a certain price point. Again, may not look correct at first, but they will get that right. Okay, let's go on to extended downtime tomorrow, the 15th, for database maintenance.
Yep.
Cross your fingers.
Yep. I see that your launcher should now have a big red banner bar. So when you launch the game, you should be reminded of this. So cross your fingers. Hopefully, I don't blow up the database. But yeah.
All right, war update.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say normally extended. They don't actually tell you how long it's extended for, but so just keep an eye out for when the servers come back up.
Yeah, Howie, thanks for the raid there. RWE Gaming. Okay, so in a series of battles around QI TAC S9W, that's Immensia, several groups have engaged in an 87 billion ISK price tag for the battle. Okay. Legion of X, Death, Razor Alliance, Unreal Alliance, and Valkyrie Alliance are members of the Fire Coalition, which is fighting Goon Swarm. Dreadbomb is a member of Wrecking Crew, who also brought Combat Wombat. Is that who I think it is? Is that
I don't know. Who do you think it is?
Combat Wombat? Didn't we just interview that CEO who's a new player? I'm thinking of somebody else. The Wombat throws me off. Okay, they are fighting Fire Coalition. It's probably not them then, because I think this group is somewhere else. A third group, led by Synergy of Steel and Black Rose, also joined the battle. The Fire forces formed with 247 ships, including Revelation dreadnoughts and Mercurial Drake combo. Dread Bomb Wrecking Crew formed with 85 ships consisting of Phoenix dreadnoughts, those were missile boats or giant missile dreadnoughts, and a Nightmare fleet. Synergy of Steel and Friends were also fighting Dread Bomb. They formed 68 ships consisting of a Drake fleet. Fire and Synergy of Steel lost 114 ships valued at 27 billion ISK. Dread Bomb lost 85 ships valued at 60 billion.
So probably Dread Bomb lost more dreadnoughts, where Fire and Synergy of Steel lost a number of their Drakes and Macarials and the smaller ships, because otherwise your ISK wouldn't have been 2-to-1 like that with even though the ship number was higher. So
right,
yeah, this is an interesting fight, just from who is fighting, right? XX Death, Razor, Unreal, Valkyrie, they're all part of the Fire Coalition, aligned with Pappy, but this was in against the Wrecking Crew, right, which is kind of doing their own thing, and with Goonswarm, of course. So they this fight against Wrecking Crew is kind of like an off to the side fight. So kind of an interesting
yeah, well,
opportunity, I guess.
Dread Bomb actually went over and attacked. I think Volta and Dread Bomb were both attacking a Fire Coalition at one point, looking for those. I don't want to say easy kills, but in their mind, maybe easy kills. But they kind of got back. They kind of got pushed back by Fire Coalition, which it consists again of Russian plus some other groups like Razor and stuff. The thing that is striking about this is Dread Bomb. They just took a pretty heavy loss when they attacked Amamaki like a week ago and stuff. I want to see how they recover. So I think they're trying to get something going, some momentum going. And I think Fire Coalition is supposed to be, again, like beefy, heavy targets that are easier. And I'm not sure that's working out for them, but we'll find out.
Yeah, I guess where I didn't completely finish my thought is Wrecking Crew,
Sorry.
Dread Bombs. No, it's all right, because I lost it, so it wasn't like like you stole it on me. Like, it wasn't like you did any you didn't shank me or anything. Let me put it that way.
It didn't shank you for your talk space? Okay.
Yeah, it didn't shank me for a talk space this time. No, I kind of lost where I was going with it. Is but Wrecking Crew, Dread Bomb, or fighting in low sec, fighting in high sec, fighting in null sec in a few places. They're often low sec in that Keepstar fight. They're all over the place. It's interesting. I know they traditionally are really a low sec alliance, but they're part of Wrecking Crew now, basically holding all of Pravi, and they're certainly are an organization that likes to just take fights. There's lots of verbal sparring on other talk shows with
well, you
Dread Bomb, and
you saw that up close, didn't you?
Yeah, right. And yeah, exactly, because they came into our area, right, in Fifth Obelisk. And so, but they're opportunistic, right? And so it leads to concerns of, well, what side are you on? Who are you with? And they just are out looking. They're on their own side. That's very clear. And they're very opportunistic in taking fights. They'll see an opportunity and they'll take it. So I don't know how this battle, ended up spinning up. Sometimes these things are, based. I don't see any information. Was it based on were they fighting over a structure? Were they just did they catch someone? Was there kind of a predefined? All right, I'll meet you here at this point in this system. I would like to know more, if anyone knows more about how this got started. I find these kind of fights interesting.
All right. Well, we'll check on that situation. One more thing about this area is I think that Dread Bomb, at least Billy on a show that you were on, Trash Talk Tuesday, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, was pretty pretty heated about Dreadbomb's actions during this war, because Dreadbomb started out kind of with Wrecking Crew kind of backing up Pappy.
Right.
They were kind of neutral, but then they kind of threw in with Pappy for a while at the beginning there. And then they kind of like said, all right, well, we're going to back off and do our own thing for a while in Providence. We're still trying to stabilize the place. That's as Wrecking Crew. But then Dreadbomb kind of said, nah, we're going to go over to Scalding Pass and continue to punish some former Providence groups that were over there. Kind of broke them up. And then I think they looked around and said, what's in the neighborhood? And saw Fire Coalition, started attacking Fire Coalition. According to them, they just did that because they need to keep doing stuff, right? They need to keep active, need to keep doing stuff, and they don't want to be a part of the war. It's kind of boring. But what that did is it peeled XX Death and Razor and those groups off of Pappy. They had to go back and kind of defend these areas. And you can say there wasn't much activity in their time zone anyway, since a lot of them are Russian, so it wasn't that big a loss. But I think it still angered Villy, and I think there were other people that were probably looking at that saying, "What's Dreadbomb doing?"
There was a Fortizar fight, Pappy against the Initiative, and Dreadbomb basically came to help them. They like they said, they got bat phoned, but the way I've heard the story is it wasn't really that they got bat phoned. It's just that they saw an opportunity and they took it. But the end result is still the same. They helped save a Fortizar and attack Pappy. And I was being a little more polite about it, but okay, right to the heart of the point. That's really what interests me is, if they really are a third party, then we need, both sides needs to treat them accordingly, and then they need to live with those choices, meaning Wrecking Crew, Dreadbomb, and if you're going to be in the middle, then be in the middle. Is kind of my personal opinion of it.
Right. That's some commentary there.
Yeah,
right.
Personal opinions.
Personal opinions. All right, let's go to the big story today. CSM 16 has been announced. If you have any desire to be an advisor to the company that makes this game, this is your chance. CSM is Council of Stellar Management. It is a group elected by players. There are 10 members. I think there are 2 alternates. And you belong to a select group of 10 that gets to meet with the company through, through this kind of thing, chat or whatever they use, Skype, whatever. And they get to talk about things. And there's really 3 components to CSM. The first one, let's see if I remember this, because they're actually very close. One is to CCP will vet certain features to the CSM first before they go out there. And we've talked about this in the past. It's incredibly controversial. Sometimes CSM gets too much blame. Sometimes it gets not enough blame. But in reality, the players that are elected to CSM are handed, like us, they're handed a rocking horse, let's say. And CCP hands it to them and says, here's a rocking horse. It's going into the game. You have nothing to say about it. But please sand it so nobody gets splinters. And that's about as much influence as they have on some features. And so they get to smooth out some of the rough edges and make sure that it's more digestible for players. And they use their own intuition and their own information to be able to say, this is probably a good change that'll help. Okay, that's 1. 2 is they get shown features that are, I think they also comment on features that are already in the game, like Faction War is having a problem. Wormholes are having a problem, and they get to present their information to CCP and say, can you look at this and fix some things here and there? And if CCP looks at that and says that lines up with our priorities, then CCP might actually put some effort into it. Otherwise, if you're bringing something to CCP that's not a priority of theirs, it's probably unlikely that they're going to stop what they're doing to do what you want them to do as a CSM member. The third thing, so that's 2. The third thing is they also communicate with the players to help basically sell the features, to say, they're not co-opted, they're not salesmen, but they get to basically say, hey players, let me help explain what this feature is, what it does. Let me help you transition through it. And they also take that feedback of people saying, this feature is not what we wanted, or this feature is fantastic, and they get to take that information back to CCP. So they're conduits of behavior. And so that's what CSM's 3 major functions are, and it has changed over the years. The whole CSM thing has a really deep history, which we can talk about. Maybe we'll save a show for that. Maybe we'll do that on Sunday. I'll go through the history of CSM, how it was created, when it was created, and it's not what you think. It's not T20 and all of that. That's actually when it got implemented, but that's not when it was created. It was created years before that, where they actually talked about the discourse between the makers of a galaxy and the inhabitants of the galaxy. There's only one guiding document between them, and that's the EULA. Other than that, it's all free will. But at some point, CCP knew they would have to have a voice. So consider it, the populations of Greece would need to have oracles and priests that could communicate with the gods for favor and for giving them an idea of what the conditions were that they were living under. And so they always thought that was going to happen. And that concept evolved with a scandal that happened that basically was a loss of credibility for CCP and how seriously they were taking the game with the T20 incident. And so they decided to roll those 2 things together, which they often do if you watch. And they roll out this CSM saying, we've concepted this, we wanted to put it in, now is a good time to put it in. We hear you players, don't be upset, we're giving you some political entryway into the making of the product, and here it is, the CSM. So it was a way of kind of PRing that thing down a little bit, that mistake down, and also implementing this really cool feature of having some kind of space council, which is cool. Okay, but It started again, and now it's time for you to get your, if you're going to do it, it's time for you to get your paperwork in order and get cracking at campaigning.
Yep. And if you guys want to nominate someone, approach them, do that. I hear Nick Bison's looking to do it. Maybe poke him a few times. Maybe do that. I don't know.
Is he really? I don't know. Or you just making his life miserable?
Yeah, basically. So also, if you go into the podcast channel here, one other item that was just provided to us before we close out the show is if you like fiction, like me, like I just created Nick Bison for CSM 16. That's a total fiction. But if you, instead of talking about it, if you like to write, if you're into fiction writing, the competition is still going on. It ends the 15th of May, so about a month away. There is the new Eden Capsule writing contest still happening. And of course, TIS is also looking for writers. So if you fancy writing and maybe you don't want to enter the competition and the writing contest, then come on to TIS. We're always looking for writers. There's the in-game newsletter. There's the website. Just even content for these shows. If you don't want to write like very formally, you just want to write informally and want to go gather news or articles or little interesting tidbits throughout the day. Matterall and myself and anyone else on these shows love the help. There's all sorts of opportunities to flex your writing muscle as well as your research for anything that you like in the game. So there's that.
Yeah, hold on a second. Let's see if we can get Caleb in here. Somebody likes talking about CSM and writing. All right.
Yeah, I kind of blew right through the CSM thing and went to the writing contest, but it's all CCP items. So I'll get you the link for the writing contest here.
Yeah, let's throw that in there for people. I'm not going to go over all this stuff, the application requirements and all that kind of thing. You can look it up. We'll put it in the show notes and also the video notes. What's interesting, though, is they have made it so that you are required to fill in stuff. So even if you're going to walk in to this because you already have a constituency that can put you over the top, like some big nullsec alliances have, you still have to fill out the paperwork.
This is for the CSM that we're talking about. Back to the CSM, talking about the paperwork for the,
They tend to change small things in the rules every now and then. I need to actually read up on the details. I remember that when they changed it from being anonymous to not anonymous for the player base and all that shenanigans. So there's always a little bit of weird drama and things shifting around. So read everything closely and make sure that you are that you understand that you have to sign an NDA, and usually an NDA lasts up between 5 and 7 years. So that's how long you actually have to keep your mouth shut about anything that you are given in secrecy by CCP.
Yeah, I believe also, and I don't know if this is still the case because the rules changed, but you can't really be in touch with any other game developers.
Yeah, I think they do have some sort of exclusivity clause in the NDA, but again, that's of course also because one of the reasons for the NDA is, of course, that you might be privy to information that you could actually leak to other game developers, which would be bad.
All right, we'll handle some questions. We'll talk about CSM here with Caleb, who just jumped in, and we'll talk about writing after that, if we want to. But I will take this question here from Evil Shizzle, who says, "Is it possible to build battleships in HiSec after the patch?" Of course it is.
Just like it was.
Just like it was
in the
before.
past, but I would like to ask him. Well, most things in a battleship still require some sourcing that isn't necessarily HiSec available, right?
Yeah, I think he's
Yeah.
he's asking that because there are some items that come from other parts of the galaxy, let's say, that go into a battleship, and those items are not necessarily available to be harvested in HiSec.
Well, where did he get his Sidrine and Megaside? Did he gun mine for that?
Exactly.
Yeah, I took his question to mean the patch from yesterday and today. So after those patches, yes, you can still build your battleships in HiSec because the existing recipes haven't changed yet.
You can,
That's coming, but
True.
they just preceded all the parts beforehand, though, right?
well, you
But
can.
again, everything is
Yeah.
going to be possible to build in HiSec just like before. It's just
Yeah.
that now you need to import some more things that you need to source from
Correct.
some sort of either low sec or null sec or wormhole space or whatever. You can still go and do those, but you would, if you are a specialized industrialist, you would still source that from other entities and just plug it directly into your building.
Right. Just like you may still, right, like even though right now you may still need to source pyrite or megasite, you might not be actively mining that. You may still have to go buy those things, even if you're building battleships today. But it's just the standard minerals today. The changes to the recipes are not happening yet. But just like everyone here said, you still do it in HiSec. You just have to get some more materials. That's all.
Yeah,
End of the month.
I don't want to beat this one to death, but the reason I brought it up and wanted to deal with it is because this information erroneously is getting out there and it's confusing people. People are basically running around with their heads cut off saying stuff that just is not true. And we want to make sure that we bat a lot of that stuff down so that the hysteria kind of calms down. And as people unwrap these major changes, these are the biggest changes we've seen in 10 years. Maybe.
The short end is the vertical integration thing has grown very high, right? And it kind of now requires a little bit from all manners of space. So if you want to source everything yourself in a vertical integration model, you need to do a lot of things and be pretty much present everywhere, right? But most of the lower end stuff is exactly as it was before. The only thing is the new reaction things with gas, and then of course, well, a controversial one that we haven't talked about that much, which is that I think it's Supers and Titans do have a limitation where it's tied to an actual hard loot drop in the game, which is really bad, and we will have to discuss this ad nauseum because it's a problem and it's a bad solution in my opinion.
Yeah, it's easy enough to get confused. I know personally I was confused about the faction frigates and faction cruisers. I actually, for some reason, had it in my head that only the Battleship and up recipes were changing, but I was corrected by some alliance mates. Thank you very much. And then I quickly had the WTF moment and came back here and talked to Matt and a couple others and was like severely embarrassed. So that somehow I missed that. But so many changes.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's also the skill limitations on things like faction stuff, and there's also some new components in faction builds, as far as I remember. And then there's the flattening of a lot of the subcaps have been grouped together in groups where they're pretty much the same build. I think we've termed this the homogenization and the flattening of the build requirements. And personally, I think that's a mistake because
for mineral inputs, you mean?
Yeah, I think it's a mistake to suddenly flatten them and make them almost the same across the board, because the racial variations was actually something that had a very meaningful reasoning behind it originally. So this is like baby with the bathwater. It's a bad solution. There's many good things in these industry changes, in my opinion, but there's a few really bad ones that I don't really understand, and I think is a massive mistake. Of course, they can always change things and tweak them down the line. I just think the philosophy on this part with the homogenization is a mistake. And to people that are going, oh, everything is getting so expensive. Well, I don't think there's anything sub well, even including some of the big hulls, freighters and rockwells and whatnot, it's only things above that which might actually increase more than 200%. And if something isn't changing more than 200%, and if you look at the faucets, you're not really going to notice that much. It's just a matter of people that burn through a lot of resources, and especially ship hulls. So basically, mostly nullsec entities and maybe gankers and some high-end low-sec entities that fight a lot. To your average player, this is not really that much of a change.
By the way, you can, if you want more information, if you have any questions at all, and no questions are bad questions, come to Talking in Station Discord. We have an industry channel. We have experts in there that are answering all kinds of questions. We can give you clear information at length, not just on this show, but you can get follow-up questions until you actually figure it out. It's not going to be easy to figure out, though, and I want to prepare everybody for that. These changes took someone like Kenneth like a month to really get his head around, and he's a genius level construction guy in EVE Online.
Are you trolling me now?
That's why everybody is. Don't jump into that. Don't jump in. Don't take that bait. That's why everybody is freaking out. Is because they're taking snapshots of something that is way bigger. They're taking snapshots of trees when we're supposed to be looking at a forest. It's going to take you a while to climb up to a hill where you can see the whole forest. Until then, you're just taking pictures of trees and panicking about the forest disappearing. Now you can jump in. Go ahead.
Nice. I'd rather go down the pipe that this is only phase one. And there is, at least as far as I can tell, 3 or 4 phases to these changes. We already know that phase 2 will be about Tech 2 hulls, right? And then we still have things like modules. And then after that, we also should be getting a pass on structures. Because when you're changing industry like this, you're going to have to go through the entire
the whole thing, right?
Phase, right? Yeah. You need all the steps, right? So this is the prediction. This is where they're going to go. And as I have said, I'd be surprised if structures do not end up at least extra large, being almost 5 times the current cost, if not more, because they're way too cheap and it's ridiculous right now. You have a situation where on paper, a Titan will be more expensive than a Keepstar. That makes no sense.
What if, it makes sense to me actually, but for gameplay reasons, not in theoretic reasons. But what if T2 gets simpler? Because T2 is kind of complicated. This whole new thing that you have to do for T1 ships is really a modified T2. Like that's what you've always had to do with T2 is you had to do multiple steps in order to get to a final product. Whereas at T1, you only had to do one step to get to a final product usually.
I don't think that CCP is going to want to change.
That's Tiberius.
I don't think that they're going to want to change Tech 2 production at all, because the complexity adds to the costs, which allows for middlemen to exist. For me, looking on the outside in, this, the Tech 1 changes looks to me that they're trying to allow for more middlemen to exist in smaller groups who specialize in producing one thing inside of a supply chain. Tech 2 already kind of allows for that to a certain degree. I could definitely see them maybe tweaking things a little bit with the changes, but personally, I don't see at least Tech 2 ships, having a significant change anytime, during the.
I agree with Tiberius. I don't think they're going to touch Tech 2 principles that much. I think they might be tweaking a few things. They might be adding a few quality of life tweaks to stuff like the invention phase. I think they could reintroduce things like consumption of meta modules to increase the results. I think they could also allow some meta drops and items that are by nature below Tech 2 to be actually used to build Tech 2. I think that's also a viable change that might come in, because I don't see why you can use a T1 to create a T2, but you can't use a Meta 2 or Meta 3 to create what's effectively a Meta 5. It's just, there's a few silly things like that they might actually tweak and change, but I would be surprised if they do any serious changes. I'm almost expecting them to just leave it almost where it is.
Well, like I said, every time you think of changes, you might think like, oh, they're nerfing something. They actually might buff it. Who knows? We're all speculating on what happens with T2. I agree with you guys. It's complicated enough. It's complex. These T1 changes now kind of put it in a little bit closer to T2, about halfway between where it was and where T2 is. So people get an idea a little bit. And that's nice for builders. Let me just finish this. It's for builders that are coming into the game, the early stuff, the small ships, the small modules, whatever, that stuff's really kind of easy to build still, really easy. But as you get bigger and bigger ships, including the battleship and beyond, it starts to get more and more complicated. And that's a nice gradual increase of player knowledge that you can start to acquire.
Yeah, and remember, all the changes they have been doing to T1 always impacts T2 as well, right?
Yeah.
If you want to build the Tech 2 variant of a battleship hull, you're still going to need a battleship Tech 1 hull, right, to build that. So these things are all tied together. They might tweak some of the requirements on some of the T2 stuff. They might boost them to make them require a bit more. But again, it's not really that necessary. So I would be surprised if they do that much, especially because if you think about it, this is okay. Nick said that if someone's mentioning slots 3 times, I magically appear. But if they do anything with slots, this is going to impact things like invention a lot, right? And because there's so many things going into Tech 2, that means that slot limitations will have a massive impact from Tech 2. This is going to be the main thing that drives that bottleneck. So they don't need to change anything in Tech 2, only the slots. That's actually almost enough to have a massive impact.
Beetlejuice has about the same, what do you call it? Increments as bottleneck. Oh, it's Caleb.
Yeah, well,
he's here to talk about slots.
I'm pretty certain that they're going to do something with that, because having an infinity in there in that way is a massive reason why we got industry kind of destroyed, and putting it back in not the hard limit that we used to have, but something where it's basically the players that take over a lot of the industrial stuff, which is the natural progression. But if you can do it in only one location, so one DQ and perimeter, that's a problem. That's not healthy. If players should have that agency, it needs to spread out.
Okay, let's move on to something else you might want to talk about.
CSM.
I know we're going in circles because we brought it up like this is the 3rd time we brought it up. Tiberius is new to the conversation. You guys have any thoughts on CSM?
CSM, I think it seems to me that CSM had a much bigger impact on development and game game mechanics this year than it has in the previous 5 in a lot of respects.
Well, but there's a lag effect. Like a lot of the stuff that was presented 2 CSM ago finally gets rolled in now. So it might not have been this CSM that did a lot of the stuff, but
right.
previous.
But a lot of the stuff has been advocated for a long time. Multiple clones in one bay. Getting the jump routes
bridges
planned through jump bridges. And a whole handful of other stuff that people have been the red dot, for crying out loud. I was kind of surprised that it got taken care of as early as it did. But it did take a while, but I was still surprised that it got taken care of as early as it did. I mean, rolling changes got reverted to a certain extent. I'm pretty sure that that was due to Phantomite advocating for us on that regard, since he essentially pseudo kind of pledged himself to kind of represent JSpace since we lost our representative this year. So it seems to me that I'm positive about it this year. I think that especially considering these massive changes coming up, that I think that there's still a need for CSM in order to kind of keep things in check, because Kenneth specifically said that he worked with CCP for 60 odd hours at least.
300
hours. Wow.
No.
Which is
it was, it was, I think.
Yeah.
It was since October, many hours.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a tremendous amount of work. And CCP advertises that it's like 60 hours total is your minimum commitment. So he has gone well far and above the total commitment that he needed to do in order to be a good representative. So obviously, to me, CSM is still important. It's still meaningful to a certain degree, I should say, and that it seems to me that CCP is paying attention again, because there have been years where they've been completely ignored or nilled out, and there was a price to pay for it, and people, things happened. Blackout is a good example. The rolling changes last year for getting rid of capital rolling and wormhole space, et cetera, et cetera. We can go on and on and on about some of these things that have come about.
Any of you guys, anyone here going to run?
I've considered putting my name in the hat just because we don't have a
wormhole rep.
We don't have a wormhole representative, and Exuki isn't in wormhole space anymore. I love the guy. He's in a very vast wealth of knowledge, but I haven't heard about it or seen any other wormhole candidates yet. So I'm definitely considering a bid.
Interesting.
I think to add to what Tiberius is saying, I really hope that CCP changes the way they utilize the CSM, because it feels to me like they're at risk of burning them out even more than they used to do in the past. I don't think CSM members should be used in a way that starts tiptoeing into armchair developer. I think that's a mistake. I think it's because CCP are afraid of rolling out meaningful focus group work, which is what is going to be required in the future, because all the things that they're trying to do now with making meaningful changes to Eve, at least that's what I'm seeing, requires focus groups and not armchair developers.
Right, and you need essentially, in order to do focus groups, you need to have people who are interested in the product and whatever it is that you're trying to sell, or you need subject matter experts in whatever it is that they're trying to change, iterate, or create. And I think that that's a pretty healthy balance in where the CSM should be, is that, they're essentially getting exactly what Caleb said, as a free focus group for a larger. So it's not really free, because they, do pay for a couple of luxuries for them to go out and visit in Iceland and stuff like that. But, you still do get essentially good labor for for relatively cheap compared to if you were to do this, if you were to get professional focus group help.
Well, again, use yourself as an example, right? I would be perfectly fine as a player seeing someone like you being a CSM member and then chairman of a focus group. But if you're solo, supposed to be responsible for any changes and discussion about wormholes, I see that as a risk, because not everyone that plays in wormholes or should want to play in wormholes may play the way you do, and you might not actually have that perspective. So you would end up helping CCP design something that ends up being a little bit biased. This is the risk about subject matter experts being the only voice on the CSM. And it's the same with what we've talked about many, many years about the null focus, that null groups, because of their size, gets the most votes, right? So there's a lot of voices that are not being heard, and this is why I think CCP needs to start looking at focus groups again. I think they were successful with the structures focus group. I think maybe the faction war thing was not that good, but they have had some good successes with this. It's just that they haven't figured out a meaningful procedure, because I think they need to move in that direction if they want to do big changes and complicated rollouts that a game in its third decade is going to require. So I think they need to change. They desperately need to change how it works.
All right.
I think the environment of CCP has changed as well with the purchase, and so I wouldn't discount that the influence of that making maybe them more susceptible or open to meaningful changes to CSM, and maybe even some of the impact they're having now as a result of that, more openness as a company. So yeah.
Last thing, writing. Caleb, what do you think of writing and talking in stations? Do they go together?
What, our publishing thing?
Hmm?
Well, I am really looking forward to our publishing platform getting polished and ready. And I seem to see that we have a lot of people interested, both from reading side and also especially from the writing side. And I think it's one of the things that I've been sad that it's been suffering over the past, I'd say, almost 8, maybe even 10 years, right?
What's been suffering?
Well, writing in general, you still had the people that insisted on writing Eve Media stuff, but it's just gone downhill compared to in the old days when long format and we had a lot of competitors. EN24 is a little bit dead. Crossing Zebras don't really exist anymore. A lot of bloggers are falling out. There's only like the stubborn ones left, like Noisy Gamer, right? So I think it will be nice to have some new blood coming in and doing some writing, and it will be nice to have a platform to put all our content in.
Wow, Eve News 24 is blown up. What happened?
I don't think they're really the super active. Usually more to use a scrubbing bot, it looks like, going and grabbing just items from the internet now. Yeah, they used to, back in the day, there was the blog banter, which would challenge bloggers and people who would write to take on a specific topic. That would be fun to see come back. Crossing Zebras, Jag and Xander can kiss my ass, but other than that,
Wow, shots fired.
no, those guys were good. We had a lot of fun. They actually started their site. They started their podcasting because of listening to Jade and I do our podcast, and so they picked it up, and they actually did a really damn good job. They went above and beyond even what we were doing. They had a fantastic podcast. They expanded to writing. Those guys kind of knew what they were doing, so we were always kind of lovingly hateful to each other, just kind of for shits and giggles. But yeah, it's too bad that they're not involved anymore. But I think their site's kind of hanging on there a little bit, which is unfortunate. But
I don't think any new stuff's on there, right? Crossing Zebras. I'd be
yeah, I
shocked.
don't think so.
That's too bad. Went the way of Eve Tribune, and there's a lot of history that gets lost when those sites go down. It's really sad. Yeah, that's why we hope to stick around long enough. And now I think for a long time we were only a podcast, and that's really all we wanted to do. It was an easy way to express ourselves as a pundit class without putting a ton of work into it. And we were doing other things, so it just became an easier way to do that. But we decided that should be something that was done in front of people. That's why you have this live show. It's punditry live. The result is a podcast. Even these daily shows are podcasts now. And that kind of fulfilled that feeling of wanting to talk about EVE Online with friends. But there is kind of a romance to the written word, right? Like there's a nice, you can kind of clean it up and have a poetic time with it. And, I think it can be moving as well. I remember writing one article and I was in tears and I put it out there and then other people were in tears. And I was like, yeah, you related to it like I related to it. And that can't really be done, live. That needed to be done with written work.
There's a lot of stuff that can't really be done in a live or streaming mode, or even in a composed video format. Personally, I think when you're talking about things like complicated explanations, like let's just take something like the industry changes, we can talk about those up and down, hour after hour. It doesn't really convey the important information. You need the written word to do that, so you can actually go in there and show everything and explain it step by step. This is just not that useful when it comes to a video format or just talking and discussing things, right? So I think the written word still is very valid for certain topics. And then, of course, just take something like one of the things that I've been a fan of recently. There's this writer that has been writing on INN in almost RP format, where he's writing it as if him and his dudes are in some sort of weird spaghetti western thing, like Ennio Morricone movies. And it's just, you can't do stuff like that in a stream, right? This is just only something that works in written format. So fan fiction stuff, and yeah, there's tons of things that demand the written format.
Yeah.
Eve writing must get good at English fast.
All right. So we'll move into that, I think, soon. Are you seeing INN, Eve News 24, Eve, New Eden Post? Are you seeing them as colleagues or as competitors? How's that work?
Well, it's a bit like the rest of Eve, right? We're all competitors until we end up blue balling too much, right? But blue balling is natural, and collaboration and sharing talent and stuff like that. We had this when we started TIS, right? When we moved in, we came from INN. We had and shared a lot of brain power, right? And we were friendly with even EN24, with your contacts, and with Crossing Zebras as well. So there's always this, I think I've jokingly said, there's this incestuous relationship when it comes to the Eve media. And this has always pretty much been a thing, because we're too few voices to actually start being massively aggressive when it comes to competition. And I think that's also true about in-game Eve gameplay, right? People swap uniforms a lot. They blew up each other and go into peace mode, and then at some point someone says something bad about someone's girlfriend, or is nasty to someone in chat, and then suddenly there's a war, right?
Yeah, but it works better that way, honestly, right? It's much like the analogy I always had in my head was like the music business, right? So you're an artist and you find other new artists, and it's in your best interest to collaborate with them and promote them and push them forward, maybe under your own recording label, maybe not. but it benefits you by benefiting them. And I think that's also true in a pay it forward Eve way, right? I just told the story about Jeg and Xander and Crossing Zebras, how they started. Dominarch also same way. He came to me when I kind of started coming back. He's like, I started podcasting because of you. So there's like two groups there. Dominic does a fantastic job. Dominarch does. He's over on Trash Talk Tuesday. He has his own show, does his things. Obviously Crossing Zebras had great, but there's an ebb and a flow to this. This is a game, so this isn't life. So you always need to kind of keep paying it forward and helping promote. If you believe in the writing, you believe in podcasting, you enjoy the game, and you want to be a voice, then it's in your best interest to help promote other voices, because at some point you're going to want to stop or take a break, or heck, just go on vacation even, and you need other people to fill that spot moving forward. So I think it's kind of inherent in our best interest to behave accordingly. Except for Crossing Zebras, they can kiss my ass.
And die in a fire.
No one dying in a fire. Jeg and Xander are fantastic. I got to follow up with that. But
All right.
Yeah.
Speaking of taking a break, we got to take a break. We'll be back tomorrow with more Talking in Stations. Last shout outs for you guys. I feel like a waiter. I'm coming around with little, would you like an appetizer?
Can I have a water,
A
please?
little drink
I'm
after?
full. I couldn't even take, not even a mint. Not even a mint.
It's wafer thin? No?
No, anyway for that. No, it can't.
All right. Well, I'm done serving tonight. So we will see you guys at the Talking in Stations Cantina Bar tomorrow.
Shank free zone.
Shank free zone. So take care. That's all from Talking in Stations. We'll see you next time.